Welcome back to the shop. I'm Jason, and today we are working on Project Black Pearl. We're going to address a safety concern that was on this car when I picked it up. See, we've got her sitting here in the inspection bay, and this is a concern that you're going to find on pretty well every vehicle with a multi-link front suspension. It's not a hard fix, but it can be a dangerous thing to have if you don't take care of it. This is one of those things that will happen slowly over time, a little at a time, and oftentimes consumers, customers don't know that this problem is there until it gets really aggressive. Let me get in the car, I'll show you what we're talking about. Most of the astute observers probably already know what suspension problem I'm talking about. It's common on all multi-link vehicles. Still getting used to this clutch. And what we're talking about is the thrust rod bushings, thrust arm bushings, tension strut bushings, whatever you want to call them. Here's how you test for them. We're rolling at 20 miles an hour. I'm going to tap the brakes and you're going to listen. It sounds like something is trying to come out from underneath the vehicle. What's happening is as those brakes are absorbing the load or friction from the road, they're pushing back on those bushings. And these bushings are some of the worst failed bushings I've ever seen. I'll show you when they get up in the air. Let's start with a quick look at the actual bushings. You can see right here, that's our bushing in question, and the dramatic tear all the way along that edge. We'll come over to this side. You can see it's torn as well. At the top, even worse. It wouldn't surprise me if these weren't torqued properly. This side, you can see they're hydraulic filled. There's fluid coming out of it too. And right up there. To get us started, we're gonna pop our sway bar bolt bracket loose, or what do I wanna call this? Our sway bar bushings. That way we have access to the inner bolt. Grab your brackets so they don't wind up falling on you. Now we have much better access to our bolt here. We can just move the sway bar back and forth a little bit to give us the access that we need. And we're gonna have to turn the steering linkage to get in there a little easier as well. We've got a 21 on both sides. Let's see. Get it loose enough to get the nut off. And with our sway bar loose, we can wiggle it around to get our bolt out. There it is. Now at this point, once you have your bolt out, make sure that you get a hand up on the arm so that it doesn't fall out and hit you. In this case, with the steering pushed over, it's stuck up in there. But as soon as I move the steering, it'll pop right out. You definitely don't want that swinging out into your face. On our inner ball joint here, we have a 22 millimeter. Now technically you're supposed to remove the shock, split it here, slide it up so that you can get a Torx bit or a hex bit inside of the ball joint. We'll see if we can get it off without doing that today. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Quite loose. So what I'm looking for is I want to see if the ball joint is spinning with the nut, which it doesn't appear to be. So you'll see our nut is going to be stuck in there. Now we need to break the ball joint free of the bushing. To break the ball joint free, you could use a big ass hammer or a ball joint separator. This is probably the recommended method. I've hammered a bunch of these apart, but because we're saving this one, I'm gonna try to go about it a little more diligently. Woo, there it is. And with that nut up there, it didn't shoot down onto the floor. There we go. Now don't lose your big thick washer. This is what goes on the top. Make sure that you don't pull out your bushing as well, because that has to get pressed back into your knuckle. So now at this point that you've got your arm off, you've got a couple of choices. If you ordered complete arms, well, you just install the new ones. Easy peasy. If you're replacing the bushing like I am, well, you're gonna have a couple of limitations here. One, the style bushing you choose to put in it, and two, how you're gonna get the old one out. If you're putting bushings in like I am, well, you can go about this really simply. If you don't have a press and a bunch of adapters, or you don't know a friend or somebody that has them, you can cut this old bushing out. Cut around the inside, and then just chisel through, bend it, get that baby out. It will come out. I've done that with subframe bushings. If you are pushing in a new bearing, well, it doesn't make sense to do that. You may as well press this one out like you're supposed to, and then put in the new bearing. In my case, I have been really pleased with my PowerFlex bushings in the M5. I'm running their black bushings, which are harder than the purple bushings. These are more of a street soft compliant bushing, but they're not liquid filled and halfway installed like these. There's only the rubber on these two sides, and then there's lots of movement. I don't mind a firmer suspension. My back minds, but I don't mind. So with these, we don't have to press them together. We will, however, press the old bushing out for reference to see how that works. So I'm gonna dig through my collection of Harbor Freight tools here with my Harbor Freight press and find which cups are gonna work for this, and then we'll start pressing. Just like that. Oh, interesting note, this car has 176,000 miles, and this appears to be the original Cosmoline that gets sprayed on the undercarriage when these come across the ocean. Yeah, I don't think this arm's ever been replaced. Even though the ball joint feels solid. Well, I'm pretty stoked about that. Well, I kind of wish it was replaced at some point, but good job, BMW. The part lasted this long. And yes, I'm cleaning them before they go back in the car. That's what I do. Our PowerFlex bushings have a short and a long side. The short side is going to go on the tube side. The long side is going to go on the plate side. Conversely, the short side is going to get the washer. So this is side A and this is side B. We want to make sure that we're paying attention to that as we put the bushings in the arm. So here on the bushing, you can see right there, this is bushing B, and this is bushing A right there with a short side and a long side. And on the arm goes in the car like this. Our short side is over here, long side is over here. Let's double check. See, A. This is where these bushings really pay off as far as installation. That is much easier than pressing in a new bushing. Now, obviously, I have my press here. We could have just done that. But if you're doing this at home and you cut the shell of your old bushing out and you figure out a way to get this done, you don't need all the rest of this equipment, and you don't need to take your arm to a shop and have it done either. So that is one thing to bear in mind when you're doing this, that doing these could save you that hassle. The ones I'm using are the street version. There are upgrades that you can do with these. You can run the X5s, which I believe are stiffer, and there may even be a police package option, which was an enhanced bushing that was also stiffer. Might have only been on the 740, I don't recall. Okay, and then as far as lubrication, there are these grooves on the inside. See those in there? We're just going to apply some of this PTFE grease inside for our bushing to run through, our bolt bushing or whatever this thing is. Okay, that slides through nice. Now, you may have noticed the arm is super duper clean. I also took my snap ring off of the ball joint boot, and I filled this boot up with some fresh grease so this guy can move nice and freely and hopefully last, I don't know, another 100,000 miles. Who knows? Let's talk about some of the common DIY pitfalls of this job. The most prominent is going to be how you torque this bushing into place. Most people mess up here And that's probably what winds up causing most of the damage to these bushings. When you look at the bushing, you can see that it needs to be lined up here. If you torque it in place with the car up in the air like this, and then lower the car, it's going to put tension on that bushing one way or the other, which we can actually see that tension on that bushing over there. A better visualization is right now the suspension is drooped out, right? Obviously not to this degree. If we torqued the arm like this and then lowered the car, now you've placed that bushing in a constant state of stress. It's going to cause that thing to rip much, much sooner and way more premature than you are ever going to want to, causing this kind of reaction. In our case, because we're using a lubricated center joint that is disconnected from the bushing, we could literally torque it anywhere and it's just going to spin into place and be fine. Another benefit of doing this, otherwise what I have to do is either lower the car down onto ramps or the ground or whatever it takes, or raise the knuckle up here on this corner with a pull jack. Now honestly, when I was a technician, that's how I did it. I've never had a car come off, crossing fingers. At the same time, if you had taken the strut assembly loose, which is how the repair instructions say to do it, it would have pushed the knuckle back up into the strut and you'd have gotten everything lined up there as well. That's the primary reason you're supposed to do an alignment after this. In our case, I think we'll be okay until we replace a bunch of the other suspension components. Hopefully that makes sense. Don't torque it drooped out like this if you're using a standard bushing. If you're using one of these, should be fine. One note, if you're pressing in a new BMW bushing, is this is your alignment mark right here, and it should line up right there. These are close. I mean, that'll do it, but that should align there for a torque at ride height. We'll get it up and in, but we have to get our washer and our nut on because remember, there wasn't enough space there. See there, the ball joint just needs enough tension pushing into its housing since it's a friction fit. You do this with a jack or a jack stand, or in my case, a pull jack. At the knuckle, we're going to be torqued down to 80 Newton meters here. You're going to have to find a way to torque it. Obviously, with the strut assembly in there, we're not getting a torque wrench in. We're going to need our washer on the A side of the bushing, short side. We're going to put the bolt in just enough to be able to catch our washer. See, we can just tap her home. Other side lined up. She falls right into place. Outstanding. Now, the torque on this side is 110 Newton meters, which we can hit with a torque wrench. And remember, if you're not using a bushing like this that can rotate, you're gonna have to torque this at ride height. We put a few miles on the car with these bushings. So far, so good. I mean, honestly, with 176,000 miles and as worn as this suspension is, I don't think I could possibly feel any extra NVH or harshness from these if I wanted to. The front brakes still have a little bit of wear pattern on them from sitting for so long. These tires are basically brand new on the car, and they were manufactured in 2019. It's 2024. So yeah, I think it sat for a little while. It's not gonna sit anymore, I can tell you that much. I really appreciate you watching. I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Like, subscribe, comment, do all those things. Stick around if you want to see how much this all costs. Well, that was a successful repair. I'm really happy with how these bushings turned out. and just how much money this car has cost. We've gotten to the tally point. In addition to our last repair, these bushings were $96.98, bringing our total to $4,139.31. Now that this is running and ready to go, my next step is to get enough mileage on here to get it smogged. Once it's smogged, I can get permanent registration and get me some plates and actually be good to drive down the road. Now I need to get the drive cycles to run on this, which I'm not sure how long that's going to take. It's kind of a convoluted process. So, thanks for watching. One last thing. We got to cross off our thrust arms. Bingo. I swear, having a list really does help mentally and emotionally to track your progress and feel like you're actually getting somewhere. When you have a list this long, I priced out everything on here at close to, it was like $6,500 in parts. It's gonna take me a little while to chip through here, but checking one box off at a time, whoo, that feels great. Almost as great as driving this thing.